Glass mouse pads are really starting to get popular. Super low friction, perfectly consistent experience, and I mean, they look super clean. I've always found these really interesting, especially the completely unfiltered input that you can have. You can make the tiniest of micro adjustments with this thing, and you just will not get that from any of the fastest cloth pads out there. But this by far is the most challenging surface to play on, which has basically been my experience so far. I mean, it's a super interesting experience, but there's basically zero stability. And to be honest, I end up playing a bit overconfident on them. But what if I took switching a bit more seriously? What if I forced myself to play on a glass mousepad for 30 days? Would I improve? Would the switch be worth it? Now, I'm already playing on a pretty low friction setup, custom 30-gram mouse on an Artisan Raiden, and I'm mostly playing Overwatch 2 DPS with 2.4 cents, 1600 DPI, which is like a 36 centimeter 360. Really no complaints about this setup, but yeah, glass pads have me super interested in going even faster. And the reason for that is that, yeah, the Artisan Raiden is one of the fastest mouse pads on the market. I mean, just compare it here to the Logitech G640. The Raiden is ultra low friction. But I mean, compare that to glass, yeah, there is a really big difference. But I've got to say, after those first few days, it brought back vivid memories of trying to use a glass mouse pad in the past. This feeling of potential, like it could be really good, but then just overall playing worse on it. I mean, the fact that you can do the smallest of micro adjustments and that every small input is registered, that is really cool. Like, the theoretical aim potential here, I feel, is massive. It's the best thing about glass mouse pads for competitive FPS for sure, but I'd say it's also the worst. The expectation is that you're instantly going to improve your tracking feel and it's going to be smoother than ever, but honestly, I just felt more jumpy and twitchy than anything. And that bled into my other gameplay as well. I was overthinking things, losing a bunch of confidence, and my positioning and timing were just really off. But by far the biggest problem that I've had with glass mouse pads is this feeling of your arm and wrist getting stuck. You can have the least amount of friction and the smoothest tracking from the mouse, but that's all just ruined by this feeling of like your arm and wrist getting glued to the pad. So this is where a compression sleeve comes in. And compression sleeves, they've been around for a while, but these ones here from Pulsar, which are actually relatively new, they're cut specifically for aiming. You've got the forearm ones, you've got like, just glove kind of specific ones if like only your hand is getting stuck, which, that is pretty cool. But yeah, I decided to go with like a full coverage option because I guess I just have like a lot of hand and arm contact with the pad. And look, I'll be the first one to say it, this looks absolutely ridiculous. Like, are you insane? You're gonna wear a compression sleeve just to sit down and play games. Like, is that really what you've come to? Yeah, it looks insane, but I do come from a bit of a sporting background. I used to compete in powerlifting, and in powerlifting there is a lot of equipment. There's wrist wraps, knee sleeves, lifting belts, lifting shoes, and then there are things like chalk, baby powder. All of these things do allow you to lift more weight. They improve your technique, and overall you do get an improvement in performance. So this idea then of being like too good to wear an arm sleeve when it comes to gaming, I had to get beyond that because at the end of the day, it can improve your performance as well. And gaming is competitive too. What else is, playing multiple hours a week, queuing ranked, and trying to improve. And I've got to say, the sleeve was kind of a game changer. My skin was no longer getting stuck, and at the same time didn't feel too slippery. This really improved the consistent feel of things, which is really important. Still a bit shakier here than normal, but definitely building some confidence and improving. Most of all though, just actually finding it to be an enjoyable and fun setup to play on. I do not know though how people would use glass pads without a sleeve. I just found it to be impossible. At this point though, I was still seeing some of those little hand twitches and shakes that I just wouldn't see on a cloth pad. The friction here is so low that it just kind of reveals all of those imperfections in your raw hand control. Now, if you're interested in a glass mouse pad, there are kind of three main ones that you should know about. The first one is the SkyPad 3.0. This is the first one that I've tried, and most people using a glass mouse pad are probably using a SkyPad. It's pretty much the OG. And although I keep saying glass pad because it is constructed mostly of glass, it does actually have a small micro texture on the surface, partly for stability and feedback, but also for the mouse sensor, which is essentially just a small camera to actually have something to visually track. If it was just a perfectly smooth surface like a glass sheet, then you wouldn't have any sensor information at all. The next one is the Serapad Kin, which is the second one that I tried, and yeah, this thing is massive. It's the biggest mouse pad that I have. It's 500 by 500 millimeters, which is massive, but to be honest, it's not what I was after because this one feels really unique, whereas whereas the other glass pads are kind of like speed pads, really low friction. This one actually has quite a bit of stopping power. So, you know, it might be something that you're after if you're playing like Valorant or CS and you want a bit more control and stopping power, but I mean, at that point, you might as well just go with a cloth pad. And then we have the new Super Glide pads from Pulsar. Comes in like a pretty plain black color and a red one as well. I'm not sure if there are other colors, but these are the two that I picked up. And yeah, to be honest, it's pretty much what I'm after. A little bit more stopping power than a Sky pad, but you're still definitely getting that extremely smooth and just fluid tracking experience. So about 3 weeks in here, our Super Glide pad feeling super comfy at this point. The sleeve also feeling really normal to put on, and yeah, things are starting to click. I mean, I know things are feeling good when I have the confidence to go for those crazy shots, and then you kind of surprise yourself when they actually connect. And although that smooth tracking is kind of what glass pads do best, I still felt pretty decent enough for quick timing stuff and flicks as well. At this point, I also reintroduced a bit of aim training in Kovacs, which I haven't booted up for months if I'm honest, but just to redevelop that mouse control on this new setup and smooth out those jitters, which are really painfully obvious when using a glass pad. And yeah, it did really help. I think at this point, I was truly realizing how relaxed and confident your mouse control has to be on a setup that is this low friction. I mean, it really benefits from being super dialed in and warmed up, and is kind of punishing if you're not. One thing I will say for sure though is that I definitely prefer a glass pad versus glass skates. So these are the Pulsar Super Glide glass skates, which I've reviewed about a year ago. Biggest problem with these are the inconsistencies that you feel across, you know, the different parts of your mouse pad, parts that are warmer than others, parts that are more worn down. The experience is a really inconsistent one. Also, if you've ever wondered what glass on glass feels like, it's basically like your mouse is on an air hockey table. There is no feedback underneath the mouse pad at all. I mean, here you can at least, you know, hear it. You can feel a bit of that through your fingertips. Here, on the other hand, there is just nothing at all. So yeah, probably don't do this. Glass pad, on the other hand, I mean, these things are perfectly consistent all the way around. I mean, I haven't felt any wear down or anything like that. I mean, it's hard to imagine that a 60-gram mouse or under with PTFE glides are going to start, you know, affecting the surface quality of such a hard surface. The only thing I'd recommend is just giving the surface a quick wipe with a cloth, just get all the dust and hairs off it before you sit down and play, because yeah, it's not nice having all of that stuff between your mouse and that glass surface. And so this is the final 30th day, and at this point I'd say I'm kind of just playing and focusing on other areas of the game rather than trying to adapt to this new mousepad feel, because after a month playing on it, yeah, I'm just kind of used to it. So especially if you're coming from a control focused pad, definitely be patient with this completely new setup. All of that stopping power and kind of input filtering will be gone, and I'd say that's the worst thing about glass mouse pads. You have to rely on your raw hand control, but it's also the best because if you're feeling super dialed in and feeling really good, I mean, I probably wouldn't trade this low friction setup for anything else. And yeah, about the sleeve, it is still a bit weird from the outside looking in, but if you care about consistency and not having that extra variable of skin contact on the pad, which changes as you start to warm up, it's actually pretty nice. So yeah, I would now say I am a glass mousepad enjoyer. You know, are they optimal? Are they like ideal? I think, you know, saying any peripheral is like the meta is pretty far stretched, to be honest, but I will say this, for tracking based games like Overwatch and Apex, that super low friction feel, if you can get used to it, is like nothing else out there. For tactical shooters like Valorant or CS, I'm pretty sure most pros are using a control pad, so that's what I'd probably stick with there. But for Overwatch, Apex, yeah, the glass is super nice. So I'm actually going to continue using the black Super Glide pad from Pulsar. I think it looks super clean. Realistically, I'm not playing that much better on it compared to the Raiden, but hey, I'm pretty used to it now, so I might as well keep using it. I've also found that my hand control on these really low friction pads does benefit a lot from regular aim training too, so I'm gonna try and be more consistent with that as well. Also, for those interested in the custom 30-gram mouse that I made in a recent video, you won't have to wait too much longer for these. I do have all of the accessories now, which is great, but the shells are currently in production, just waiting for those, as well as the packaging boxes as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's basically everything you need to know if you're interested in picking up one of these new glass mouse pads. I'll see you all in the next one.